Welcome to the Something About Sandy Film Fight Podcast with your host, Ash Baker.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Something About Sandy Film Fight Podcast, the podcast that takes the best and worst films on a given theme and offers them up to you for your delight and delectation. I'm your host Ash Baker and, well, let's get cracking, shall we? This week's theme is
Chris Evans being super.
If you're a child of the 90s, you may think, what? They're bringing back Tier 5 Friday, Big Breakfast and don't forget your toothbrush? But no. I'm not talking about the red-haired doyen of 90s British light entertainment. I am of course talking about the handsome American action star who has been not one, but two Marvel superheroes. In the mid-noughties he played Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, in the first Fantastic Four reboot of the 21st century, and then 6 years later he brill-creamed his hair and shrunk a bit to take on the all-American hero Captain America. But which is better? Sit back, relax, and have a super time listening to this week's pod. Although, watch out for those spoilers. First up, it's Fantastic Four. And here are the facts.
Year of release.
2005.
Directed by
Tim Story.
Starring
Ioan Gruffudd, Michael Chiklis, Jessica Alba, and Chris Evans.
Current Rotten Tomatoes rating.
27%.
Worldwide box office takings.
$333.5 million.
Where to watch.
Annoyingly, it was available on Disney+, but isn't at the time of recording, so unfortunately you'll need to rent it. The sequel is on Disney+ for some reason though. So Fantastic Four tells the origin story of Marvel's original team of superheroes. In this film, we see Reed Richards assemble a team to go into space to investigate some sort of cosmic science thing. But an unexpected turn of events leaves him and the team with superhuman powers, which they need to come to terms with over the course of the film. So I was quite interested to watch this film now after seeing Marvel Studios change the whole superhero game over the past 13 years or so. It was made 3 years before the first Iron Man movie was made, so effectively it was created in a completely different film-going landscape. The first sign of the difference was just how quickly the gaining of the powers happened. Within 15 minutes, Reed Richards has secured the funding for his trip, assembled a team, gone into space, had the accident, and was back down on the Earth. In a Marvel Studios film, that would have definitely taken about an hour to get through. The film isn't really interested in explaining too much detail, and the sciencey bits, I've got to say, were just all sounded like mumbo-jumbo, really. So even when it did try and explain the detail, I was not that interested. The story, on the whole, feels quite low-key, actually. There aren't whole worlds or galaxies at stake here, and there aren't sequels or other franchises that are trying to be set up, which was actually quite refreshing in a way. Most of the film is spent with the four of them getting to grips with their powers, and more often it feels more like a family feud than a mega-serious superhero film, although I've read that these characters were quite like that in the comics too, which makes sense. However, if the story feels low-key, then the film in general definitely doesn't. It is not afraid to be absolutely on the nose with its references. So, for example, Sue Storm says, "I just wish I wasn't invisible to you," before, turning invisible for the first time. And there's a bit where Johnny Storm, as the Human Torch, makes a billboard sign for a flame-grilled Whopper. Flame a bit. And the bad guy in this is completely ridiculous. He's like a pantomime villain, really. I mean, he's called Victor Von Doom, for Pete's sake. He might as well be called Bertie Bad Guy. The way he's lit, the way he stands. He's clearly read the beginner's manual on acting evil in films. Although weirdly, again, his ambitions are quite small. He doesn't seem interested in world domination or anything like that, just getting one over on his old college roommate. I felt like saying, just dream bigger, mate. The CGI in this film is just awful. Truly awful. Especially the weird Stretch Armstrong stuff with Mr. Fantastic. I mean, I get it. It was 15 odd years ago now. but I'm pretty sure I've seen films from that time where the CGI wasn't as laughably bad as this. It just needed to be much, much better. The performances were pretty poor all round, to be honest. Even the extras in this were really rubbish. Ioan Gruffudd was Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards himself. He might have the jawline of a leading man, but has none of the charisma or charm of one. Nor did he come across as a convincing geeky scientist in a way that, for example, Mark Ruffalo does as Hulk in the Avengers films. Jessica Alba was clearly there to be a bit of eye candy. I know how dismissive that sounds of a female character, but unfortunately the film viewed her in this way and frequently reduced her to as such. There was more than one occasion she ended up in her underwear, which felt completely needless. Jessica Alba did what was asked of her really, but she didn't manage to elevate the terrible script at all. Michael Chiklis is, solid as the Thing. To be fair, he has the most interesting character arc in the film, as his awful and shallow wife leaves him because of his looks, and he finds love with someone who is blind to his obvious physical issues. Although, because the film doesn't believe in subtext, this character is literally blind. And then there's Chris Evans. To be fair, I actually think he did an okay job with the poor script he was given. He had a habit of playing pretty young playboys at this stage in his career, so was well practised by the time this came around. He seemed to have a lot of fun in this role, and to be fair, he was quite a good mischievous force in the film, although the playboy stuff did start to wear thin after a while, and his transformation into conscientious superhero at the end felt a little forced. All in all, this film was really quite poor, and frequently had me shouting at the screen at the ridiculousness of it all. I suspect it's trying to have a bit of fun by being a bit tongue-in-cheek and cheeky, but neither the performances nor the script is good enough to pull it off, which just makes it all a disappointing mess, really. My official rating is...
fantastically unmarvellous.
Next up is Captain America, and yes, here are the facts.
Year of release.
2011.
Directed by...
Joe Johnston.
Starring...
Chris Evans, Hugo Weaving, Tommy Lee Jones, and many, many more.
Current Rotten Tomatoes rating.
80%.
Worldwide box office takings.
$370 million.
Where to watch.
It's available on Disney+. Captain America is another origin story. This time we go back to 1940s Brooklyn, and we find the perennial underdog Steve Rogers desperately trying to join the army and serve his country, and consistently being knocked back, until a kindly scientist takes a chance on him and transforms him into a super powerful fighting machine. Steve must harness his powers to fight the evil Hydra division of the Nazi Party and avoid the complete destruction of the world. So this was the fourth film in stage one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and by this point Marvel were well into their stride. This is a film with some serious style. It looks like the whole thing was shot through an Instagram filter, and 1940s Brooklyn was beautifully brought to life on screen. When we first meet Steve, Chris Evans' head has been superimposed on a little teeny-weeny body, and despite the CGI being much, much better than what we saw in Fantastic Four, I just never really bought him as tiny little Steve. So to be honest, it was a bit of a relief when he transformed and got his proper body back. Evans plays the scrappy underdog who becomes the nation's greatest hero really well, actually, and convincingly carries the values of the character throughout, never selling out or losing faith. In the wrong hands, I can imagine him being a bit po-faced and pious, and by extension quite annoying. But Evans manages to act it with heart and keeps us on side and rooting for him rather than hoping he gets bumped off. I also like the fact that he doesn't save the day immediately. I can absolutely believe that he was signed up as the performing monkey that's paraded around to sell bonds before finally realising his true potential. Although I've got to say I did have a bit of a problem with him suddenly becoming an awesome army captain. I mean, it was a ceremonial title to help sell the bonds. It didn't suddenly make him an experienced war strategist. Although I suppose you don't really need a strategy if you can just bosh everyone in sight. I suppose it was to the film's credit that it was so believable in the first half that the fact he goes in and single-handedly saves everyone felt a bit far-fetched. I had to remind myself that I was watching a superhero film, and that's kind of what superheroes do. I like the fact that the film isn't afraid to take itself too seriously, without trying to be an out-and-out comedy film. Evans gets to have his few quips, and Tommy Lee Jones seems to be acting with the hint of an eyebrow raise throughout the whole film. The performances were good, Evans carries the film well and plays the clean-cut hero with aplomb. The supporting cast had some pretty stellar names in it. I love how Marvel somehow attracts these massive stars to appear in supporting roles. The cynic in me would think that they do this to cover up the inadequacies of the leads. Although, to be fair, it's not needed with an actor such as Evans, so the supporting actors just elevate the film even higher. Tommy Lee Jones is clearly enjoying himself as the gruff army colonel, and Hayley Atwell is a good foil for Cap as the feisty Agent Carter. Stanley Tucci and Hugo Weaving are also having a whale of a time, although they managed to play their characters in a larger-than-life way without it becoming camp or pantomime. I also enjoyed Toby Jones's character as the nerdy scientist assistant, although I feel he could have been developed a little further possibly, if only to better set up when we see him next in the Captain America series. In summary, it was an enjoyable action film that had good performances and a well-written story, and a plot that, while had some complexities, was fairly easy to follow. It's hard to view this film in isolation when it signposts all the other Avenger titans all the way through, but it still works as a standalone film. It's engaging, you care about the characters, and you root for the good guys, which is just what you want from a superhero film. My official rating is
Captain Fantastic.
And now for a new feature, Biggest Meanie of the Week. That's my little homage to Harry Hill there. So yeah, the biggest meanie of the week this week is clearly Victor Von Doom. Such a pantomime villain. Everything about him signposted baddie, so he is the clear choice this week for biggest meanie of the week. It's that time again. Top trumps, top trumps, top trumps, top trumps, top trumps. So how are the two films going to stack up? Let's find out. The first category is
People speaking English in slightly dodgy foreign accents.
There were three in Captain America: Hugo Weaving, Stanley Tucci and Toby Jones, all guilty here, although I don't think I spotted any in Fantastic Four. So Captain America wins that round. Category 2.
Muscles.
Chris Evans' muscles actually look better and more developed in Captain America, but they're on show far more frequently in Fantastic Four, so Fantastic Four wins that round. Category 3.
Top actors in supporting roles.
Again, another strong category for Captain America, with Tommy Lee Jones, Stanley Tucci, Toby Jones and Hugo Weaving. Fantastic Four falls short again, with no top actors in supporting roles, so Cap wins this round as well. 4.
Super gadgetry and wizardry.
Fantastic Four had some pretty fancy schmancy sciencey things, including the machine to turn them back to normal, and the spaceship itself. But Cap, I've got to say, he gets it again, despite being set 60 years earlier. It's got floating cars, a conversion machine, a remote control submarine and Hydra's secret lair, so this round also goes to Cap. Round 5.
Love interests.
I know, this is incredibly reductive, especially as they're both women, but Fantastic Four does treat Jessica Alba in this way, hence the inspiration for this category. To be honest, I didn't really buy the romance between Alba and Griffiths, despite the fact that they were supposed to have been together for years previously. And the romance between Peggy and Cap is much more authentic, even though they've actually only known each other for a few days. And okay, I know Sue Storm has superpowers, but I'm backing Peggy Carter all day in a fight between the two, because she is completely badass. So Cap wins again. And the final category?
Motorbike riding.
Chris Evans clearly likes riding a motorbike. He is much more classy doing it in Captain America, I've got to say. But in Fantastic Four, he does all manner of jumps and flips and all sorts. So I'm actually going to have to give the win to Fantastic Four in this round.
And the winner is...
With a pretty convincing score of 4-2, Captain America wins this week's Top Trumps. So the final summary. Chris Evans is clearly a very talented actor, and he's able to play two different types of superhero. And I don't think it's very often that people get a chance to do that. It's interesting to see him in Fantastic Four. Whilst he made the best of what was given to him, he didn't exactly come across as a huge A-list star of the future. So the fact that he's gone on to become that says a lot about his character and his skill as an actor, I feel. I certainly think he suits the more mature and brooding Captain America, but this might be as much to do about changing tastes as it is about his maturation as an actor. We're much more used to seeing serious superheroes these days. In terms of the films, Fantastic Four was very of its time. We seem to be more used to slightly naff superhero films back then. I mean, it only took $40 million less than Captain America, so commercially it performed fairly similarly. But Marvel reinvented the whole genre, and some would say the whole industry, with the MCU, so it feels a bit unfair almost to compare them directly. They're like two completely different beasts. But in saying that, all of the elements are just better in Captain America. The script, the comedy, the acting, the special effects, the cinematography. I could go on. It's the attention to detail in Marvel movies for me that really make them stand out as a studio. Similar to Pixar, they don't let that many duff films through. And hey, don't throw Thor 2 at me. I thought it was alright actually. The quality control is part of the reason that they've become the powerhouse that they have over the last decade. I suppose the problem with that is that we've become spoiled now, and films like Fantastic Four just won't cut it anymore. Although, if that's the only problem, then it's a problem I'm willing to live with. All in all, I'd watch Captain America again, but I'd give Fantastic Four a miss. Maybe wait until they're remade by Marvel Studios now that they have the rights back to them. That's it for this week. So, what do you think about Chris Evans being super? Who do you think would win in a fight between the Human Torch or Captain America? Let me know what you think. As always, I'd love to hear your feedback on anything I've said today or on the podcast in general. The email is somethingaboutsandifilmpod@gmail.com, and it's sasfilmpod on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And if you're enjoying the series, then please leave a review and subscribe to the podcast on your chosen podcast provider. Pretty please. So, thanks for listening, and a special thanks goes to Joe Baker for all the music and Alison Moore for the voiceover work. See you next time on the Something About Sandy Film Fight podcast.